weird. Not just for this one, but different.
Showcase product this year. Repower R2.8 liter Cummins diesel. We are here with Steve from Cummins.
So this is our R2.8 liter. This is a platform we launched back in 2009. It's a global engine we manufacture all over the world. We use it in applications anything from small pickup trucks all the way up to the Ford Super Duty series down in South America, cab over trucks, school buses. Here in North America, we've started to use it with off-highway equipment, so new emissions regulation, mini excavators, power units, etc. So we have parts availability all over the world for this. The nice thing about this engine is it's 500 pounds. So unlike our beloved 4BT, this actually is a practical fit for a lot of the off-road applications, or even just 4x4s, on-road applications, Jeeps, Land Rovers, Land Cruisers, without the requirement for suspension modifications or firewall modifications. Our engine here is about 267 foot-pounds of torque. That's a flat torque curve from 1600 RPM to 3000 RPM, and it's a whole different feeling than a gas engine where you tend to have to go out in the higher RPM range to get your power. So your cruising is much more comfortable, and it's been a great package in a wild week.
So Steve, what are we going to get whenever we get this motor available at first quarter of 2017?
Yeah, so
availability?
Our announcement at SEMA Show was that Q1, as soon as we have that EO in hand, we will launch this engine to the market. When you open your box from Cummins, you'll have everything you need to make it as turnkey as our beloved 3.9.
Yes.
So a lot of people say, the 3.9 is a 3-wire engine, and that's almost true.
Yes.
But if you have the two side by side on the crate with what we're going to offer in this electronic engine versus a mechanical engine, we can actually start this with less wires. So we'll have the ECM, we'll have an alternator, a power steering pump, we will have flywheel and flywheel housing that Advance Adapters already knows how to adapt to. We'll have an engine control harness that goes to the vehicle side that's going to be fairly universal. So you could choose to integrate it into your factory harness, or you can just operate it as a standalone. We'll also include an accelerator pedal, so there's no confusion as to what you'll need. We did a survey for the last year and a half, and we were asking everyone, what would they want this engine in. We also asked them if they want our V8, our inline 6. This one ranked the highest, and it ranked the highest for these applications, mainly Jeep, and not surprising, the JK. However, for the first pass we're going to do at this, for our first EO application, we're going up to Tier 1 emissions levels. So that's about $19.99 gas to diesel swaps. Once you get into the 2007 and newer, with diesel especially, we have what we would consider active after treatment or a particulate filter. So that's going to take a bit more work. It's not to say we're not going to do it, but we wanted to get out here and get product on the market first and really dip our toes in the aftermarket. Ideally, with this being about 500 pounds, it's comparable to, let's say, a Jeep's 4-liter. Your suspension doesn't really know the difference. And the same could be said for any of the small block or V8 applications for the Land Rover and Land Cruiser crowd, or those Toyotas that have the inline 6 diesel. This is definitely a more than comparable package in terms of weight and fitment. It's actually shorter and easier to package. So we're really excited to bring this to market and turn some of these iconic older toys into more practical daily drivers and dependable daily drivers.
This is actually going to be a legal swap, where a 4BT's never been a legal swap into a vehicle like a Land Cruiser or a Jeep. We could never do that. Emissions legal. It's been done many times. This will actually, by law, legal, EO number. Your California small guys, we will think of it, best way to put it would be think of it as like an E-Rod crate engine. You go down to your ref with the EO number. It's going to be way simpler than any other diesel conversion we can do. We already have the 4-liter replacement adapter in place. We have a few Jeeps running around with them in test vehicles. As we move from there, you can see over here, we've already added Jeep 4-liter replacement. We're going to be able to replace a Chevy V8 that had a manual on it. We'll be able to do a GM automatic. So if you put a V8 in your Land Cruiser and you've already bought the conversion parts, we're going to be able to put this engine in place in your small block Chevy, retain what money you've already spent in adapters, and continue with one adapter on the back of the engine to reuse those parts. Motor mounts. We're going to have motor mounts we already have specific motor mounts just for the TJ series of Jeeps. That happens to be what our test mules are. We've got a couple different designs. We'll have those fine-tuned and tweaked by the time the engine hits the market. We're going to have the XJ market we found. We have high interest in the XJ market. We'll have a set of bolt-in motor mounts for an XJ. Go back to the original AX15, 3550. We also have more of our universal frame mounts, the guys that are familiar with our Land Cruiser and Land Rover adapter motor mounts. We're going to have the same style mounts, just simply drop this motor in place of the factory motor or an existing V8 conversion.
A little bit about the executive order process. Cummins, we want to have good standing with the EPA and CARB because we have engines in every market from 2.8 liters all the way to 95 liters. So it's very important for us to work with CARB and work with these agencies so that what we're doing is legal. We don't want to break the law. We're a clean company. We're a clean diesel company, and we're not coal rollers. We don't want to promote that. So what we're doing with our Create Engine program is every single engine sold will have EO guidance. So we're applying for EOs before we sell any of this stuff. What an EO does for a consumer is it takes away this kind of taboo or uncertainty that what they're doing is legal versus illegal. So how an EO works is you can actually look at a vehicle's stock emission standard that it was certified to, and then you can look at an EO and it will tell you which vehicles, so weight class and vintage, that engine or aftermarket component qualifies for. So if you were to buy this one, for example, and it had an EO on it that was, let's say, pre-1976, and you put it in a 2016 Wrangler, you are not going to be within compliance if you go to a smog station. However, if you follow that EO's guidance, you will be on the up and up when you go see a wreck. You'll be able to sell your vehicle or resell it in all 50 states. You will not have a problem titling it. The EO process is just a clear black and white guidance as to what is legal and what is not. So this engine right here, one thing we're missing is a power steering pump. This is a display engine only. When you get the crate, we plan to have the alternator, a power steering pump, you've got your fan hub here, and you'll have a belt on it. There's an option down here for people to adapt or fit their own air conditioner compressor, but we call this our mega bracket. This mega bracket is held on by 4 bolts here into the block. And although for the Create Engine program we'll probably start off with 1 or 2 very kind of universal applications, the aftermarket will be able to bolt right onto here with relative ease. There's nothing bolted to the face of the block. It's just these 4 bolts on the side, and then if they want to get really specific and dial in to specific applications that our mega bracket's not the best for, they can do that with a lot of ease. We're running an 8 groove pulley system here for a Serpentine drive belt. And we've got a belt tensioner here that's very familiar to Cummins customers. We've got one thing that's kind of unique for us. Diesel engines don't create vacuum, and so since we're certifying these engines for gas to diesel replacement, the 4B crowd's very familiar with going to a hydro boost brake booster setup, or if they have HVAC controls that are vacuum assist, it's kind of annoying if they're running an electric pump. This has a cam-driven vacuum pump, so you can plug your brake booster right into here, your HVAC controls right into here. Anything you need vacuum for is cam-driven. You've got an oil cooler here, and you've got remote mount oil filter housing. So we have an option for a spin-on just on the bottom, but we found that in a lot of the straight axle, four-wheel drive, especially driver's side drop applications, it was pretty close to that pumpkin. So we didn't want someone to then crush their filter if they're playing in the rocks. So we thought that a universal oil filter that you could mount elsewhere remote would be the best. It's running off of this, and you'd have a remote mount oil filter elsewhere. The engine will come dressed with a starter. The engine, like I said, if you look at it, when you compare it to a 4B, you will be able to start this thing on a skid if you want. It is completely kind of a self-contained engine. and that is, Cummins as an independent diesel engine manufacturer, our stuff goes in all sorts of applications and OEMs all around the world. So offering it as much of a self-contained, drop-in ready package as possible is one of our strengths. Bringing that to the aftermarket for crate engines is exactly what we want to do. We want to knock down any barrier that people might have when it comes to putting a different engine into a different vehicle, especially when it comes to diesel. One of the cool things about this engine in particular is the high-pressure fuel pump here. Also has its own integrated lift pump. So no more inline pumps needed. You don't have to do any kind of special remote pump. You can take out your in-tank pump if you're doing, for example, a TJ swap and just have a nice pickup tube. The way that we've started these engines is once we do a swap and we have brand new lines or empty lines, we'll just disconnect a quick disconnect fitting here. We'll put some air into the filler cap, and once you have fuel come out of that line, your buddy tells you stop. He clips it, turn the key, and the engine fires. So that's been a really nice feature, not to have to worry about electric pump relays and all that good stuff. All right, so like I said, this engine is a little different than the first engine that we're applying for an EO for. This engine is missing an EGR cooler and a crossover pipe, but it's all still within the footprint of what is displayed here. One other thing is for this gas to diesel emissions conversions, our downpipe from our turbo actually has a small passive diesel oxidation catalyst, or DOC, on it, and then it sweeps out right where your normal downpipe would anyway. It's a completely passive element that helps take the hydrocarbon kind of smell off, that edge off, and it works really well as a downpipe that you don't have to then fabricate. It's easy to bolt to. It stays within the footprint of the engine. It can be seen on the demo Jeep we have running around. When you have a gas system that you're taking off, you have evap lines from your fuel tank. Our emissions aren't dealing with evap, so that can go. Gas engines depend on catalytic converter and an evap system. Diesel engines are a little different. So our certification that we're applying for will not use any of the factory emissions equipment. It will be a certified standalone package. That being said, you will take the gasoline catalytic converter off and only use our passive diesel oxidation catalyst. Cost will simply be from our engine out. It will be exhaust pipe, muffler, done. So no factory catalytic converter. All right, so we gave you a lot of information really quick on this engine. There's still a lot more information to come. The announcement was just this Tuesday, so we haven't released everything yet. We haven't talked about pricing. We haven't given the EO number because we don't have it in hand yet. But what we have done is we started CumminsRepower.com, and that's a website where any information that we have on this that we can share, we do. It's also got a contact form on it and a link to our survey page. So if you do want our V8 next, or you do want an inline 6 next, let us know. That's exactly how we decide what to bring to market next. I know Steve at Advance Adapters, they've got a great product guide online that we'll direct people to because everyone asks us, well, what transmission does it bring to it?
Buyer's Guide does have a summary in, just like Steve said, what we have available. AdvanceAdapters.com. Stay tuned. It will be announced as we get more information. I'm going to work on trying to get a link to the Cummins Repower site from our site so we can share information back and forth. And feel free to get a hold of us. There's email addresses available on our website. I know there was on your website. Feel free to email us, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. So as we're releasing this engine, people want to know, what do they get in the box? Well, working with guys like Steve at Cummins, we're trying to package stuff so you get everything you can need for your specific application. Advanced Adapters, the adapter for your chosen transmission's going to come. We're going to have motor mounts for the application we're wanting to put in. We're looking at the TJ series of Jeeps. We can do YJ and CJ series of Jeeps with what's already under development when the motor is released. We will have the motor mounts, cooling system recommendations, and engine to transmission adapters, or even possibly the transmissions that match up if we have to replace your current unit. From there, Steve, what's going to come in your box and how's it going to come?
Yeah, so in addition to our engine control module, our wiring harness, and our pedal, we're going to try to give as much guidance as people need to do kind of what we would call an installation quality audit. So this is kind of a do-it-yourself installation quality audit so that you make sure that you have the right cooling package size. This is a charge air-cooled engine, so we'll give some recommendations on minimum sizes, maximum sizes, because you don't want it too small, you don't want it too big. We'll give specific references to, for example, the 4-liter radiator is more than sufficient for this. So if you start with a 4-liter, you don't have to do anything to your radiator. It's great. It runs at 177 degrees, 180 degrees with the 4-liter radiator. We want to provide as much of that guidance as possible so that you have no confusion, no question about what you're doing, and that you size your cooling package correctly. We'll also, from the Cummins side, we'll give a big shout out to SEMA and SEMA members, because SEMA members go above and beyond to make sure that their products, for our product, are the best in the industry. If it doesn't have SEMA on it, don't buy it.
Exactly. And to touch on one other thing our customers may not know out there, charge air-cooled engine would actually be what we refer to as an intercooler, is what the general public may not know by what the terminology is, but size of the intercooler piping will have that. We're going to have availability of plumbing products and stuff to help get that in place for you.
We use it in applications anything from small pickup trucks all the way up to the Ford Super Duty series down in South America, cab over trucks, school buses.